Welcome back to another edition of the Edge podcast. Publisher Brenden Slaughter here for BeaversEdge.com, joined by TJ Mathewson, BeaversEdge.com writer and fellow podcast host. Well, we're here, folks. 3-0 after the non-conference. Oregon State wraps up non-conference play with a blowout win over Montana State. And now the moment is here. Pac-12 play, USC, Reser Stadium, under the lights, Saturday night. TJ, welcome back to the Big Pod, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Brendan. It's going to be an exciting week, an exciting weekend. School's back on campus. Trying to find a parking spot today for interviews was troubling. I was worried for a second, but that shows you that that school's back in session. But it should be an exciting week. It's going to be a really good atmosphere on Saturday. Again, a lot of students, a lot of people back here in Corvallis. You can kind of feel fall in the air too. And the guys are excited. Got to talk to defense today. You can see those videos there at BeaversEdge.com on the BeaversEdge YouTube. It will be a fascinating matchup. I'm very, very excited to watch how Trent Bray is going to attack this USC offense. We'll get into sort of the details of it, but it's going to be fascinating. We're watching them last week against Montana State, and I don't think you could go any bigger step up in just talent across the board. Then going from, no offense to Montana State to USC. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, without a doubt. There's a bit of a step up there, and TJ alluded to it. He had today's defensive interviews as we're recording this podcast on a Wednesday afternoon. We'll talk more about the interviews a little bit later in the podcast when we're previewing USC to get TJ's thoughts on how the team is coming together in anticipation of the Trojans. From what I've heard, it sounds like there was a lot of USC fight song this week, so we'll be getting into it. It
was an interesting. It's not really something I was expecting to hear when I was walking past the practice fields yesterday on Tuesday. I guess it kind of makes sense since USC will bring their band, and I don't think is that their fight song or the something of Troy. I can't remember, but I've heard it. Yeah, I would say I've heard it a million times too, because especially ASU plays USC every year in the South. I of course went to ASU, so I'd hear it quite a lot. And I have a friend who I went to school with was an avid USC fan, so it kind of gets stuck in your head sometimes. You just you hear it enough, you just start honestly whistling along without even realizing it. But sometimes it's it's interesting though. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt again. But
you're good.
But the guy said you could go from Anthony Gould saying I just block it out, I don't even pay attention to we're just kind of getting used to it because they're going to be playing it a whole lot on Saturday. They'll bring the band. The band will be playing literally almost every single down. So you gotta get that, kind of locked in. And it's interesting though.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to talk a little bit more about the setup this week. And TJ, I'm sure you saw that they announced basically a new, even better temporary sound system for the rest of the season. So we'll talk about that again as well. But just to kind of put a nice bow tie on non-conference, TJ. Obviously, Beavers travel up to Portland this last weekend, get the win over Montana State, 68-28, almost hang a 70 burger on the scoreboard. Awesome atmosphere at Providence Park. I caught your good buddy John Warren up there. TJ was just a few seats down from him. We chatted a little bit about the experience, and it was definitely a very cool thing. Providence Park's a very unique venue for a football stadium. I loved it from what we have seen on the Beavers Edge board. Those who went seemed to have a really good experience. And I think it was an awesome way to wrap up non-conference. And, when you do it in that fashion, TJ, it's definitely a little easier.
Yeah. I wasn't expecting a 40-point win. That's for sure. Vegas wasn't either, even though, we mentioned the line shifted. I don't know if we mentioned it on this podcast, but I know here on Joe Radio on Friday, we made you could see the line opened at 13.5 for the Beavers, and it moved all the way to 17, which doesn't really happen. That's a pretty extreme shift, and sort of the public sort of maybe seeing how this game was going to go, and it played out exactly how they thought. I mean, the Beavs had a little bit of trouble tackling Tommy Mellott early, but that was really it. I mean, Chance Nolan could have dropped back and thrown for 500 yards if he wanted to. He had all the time in the world. He was just relaxed, sitting, scanning, boom, throw on target. And there's Gould dropped a couple passes in the first half. But otherwise, I mean, guys are running open, crisp routes, well-organized offensive game plan, ran for over 5 yards a carry, even though, the sort of gaudy numbers weren't really there, but still, like, you were pretty efficient on the ground.
Right.
And offensively just controlled the game. Even if your defense had a couple of slip-ups, they mentioned today that, Montana State came out in some formations that they hadn't seen before yet this year, and they had to totally adjust on the fly, and probably led to some guys being, out of place there on that first drive that really sort of probably pissed Beaver fans off a little bit when Montana State kind of just quarterback runs all the way down into the end zone.
Right.
But I guess it was very good to see the offense just like, from a Beaver fan's perspective, just to like control the game from front to start. I mean, every time the Beavers had the ball, they scored on every single possession. And you never really, after about that third touchdown, you probably had no real worry in your mind that they were gonna score all game.
Right. And I completely agree. I mean, the offense pretty much was able to get whatever it wanted in this game. I know there's a couple issues. You look at the bounced fumble when Oregon State was only up, I think 10, maybe 14 at the time. Can't exactly remember of that sequence, but that play stands out. Obviously, the first drive, as you mentioned, for the defense when Malo was just able to just get whatever he wanted on the ground. And, the Beavers even said afterwards, they were expecting a lot of gadgety, gimmicky runs. They even talked about the press conference, right then and there at Providence Park. And then the other thing that I didn't particularly, that stood out as kind of a correctable thing is allowing the kick return for touchdown. The Beavers are, a lot more stout on special teams than they showed in that particular moment, just because, they've got a veteran group back there, and, it's all about staying in your run angles and whatnot. So I guarantee that was something Jake Cookus and his crew looked at, and something that I mentioned in my recap piece over the weekend. But overall, this is exactly what you needed to have happen, TJ. You had a different, class of opponents. Each game was different. First was a moderately good Mountain West team at home. Then I think was a better Mountain West team on the road. Then you get your cupcake to kind of fine tune everything and treat Montana State like, the team that they, the difference in ability was. A 40-point victory showcases how far apart those teams are. And that's exactly what you want to see as a Beaver fan. And then additionally, knowing what we know for this game now, TJ, how big was it to get Jake Overman a start at the tight end position, get him a catch, get him a little bit more experience, knowing that Luke Musgrave will not be available against the Trojans.
Yeah, and they're going to have to lean on him more, right? You mentioned like just sort of getting him in that groove, and it's not even sort of a baptism by fire. It's just, kind of working him in. And, he takes reps in practice every day. He knows what he's doing. He's a Division I athlete. He knows how to play tight end, but sort of, working into the flow of a live game in a role that isn't necessarily his, right? Maybe he blocks a little bit more when Luke Musgrave in, because Luke's the one who's going and running the routes.
Right.
But now that Luke will be unavailable for the foreseeable future, it sounds like no specific dates obviously given by Jonathan Smith on Monday. But, it's nice, you get him a catch, and it's just a little bit more helpful, and they are probably going to need him against USC, against Montana State. Most of the passing was to wide receivers, which, again, was good to see, because that part had been a little bit inconsistent, because the first two games it was mostly Chance Nolan and Luke Musgrave connecting for passes. But this game, Trayshawn Harrison and Anthony Gould both had really good games, and pretty much everyone was open. So it was a good opportunity. But with the better athletes on the field with USC, a really good athletic tight end can be all that difference. And if you don't have Luke Musgrave, again, Jake Overman's going to have to be that guy, and he's a competent guy. When we were talking to him last week, he said he's, ready for this role. And this week will be, I would say, a true test for him.
Yeah, certainly. I think that was very important to kind of get him into the game flow against the Bobcats up in Portland. And, it's going to be key, because I think it's going to be all hands on deck. And, despite not having Luke Musgrave, Oregon State's still going to need to get production out of the position, even if it's, not quite obviously what it was. And, make note of that. No one else on the roster is Luke Musgrave, can't do what Luke Musgrave does. Have to, say that first and foremost. But, as cliche as it is in football, it is, next guy up, the game still has to be played. And, one guy doesn't determine whether you win or lose a game. So I definitely think it's going to be interesting. And on that note, as we'll mention as well, Jonathan Smith also said Trey Lowe will not play against USC, as well as the backfield will still most likely be headed by Deshaun Fenwick, Damian Martinez, and Jam Griffin. TJ, what are kind of just some final thoughts from you on the non-conference, and obviously starting off a 3-0 before we dive into USC and the Men of Troy this weekend?
So we keep, again, I'll probably say this every week, but like hitting the ceiling, right? To hit the ceiling, I would say you probably had to go 3-0 in this non-conference schedule, and that's pretty much what the Beavers did. I would say if we looked at this schedule after the LA Bowl last year and looked at the non-conference schedule, say, okay, what are they going to do in the non-conference schedule? Probably 2-1, right?
Yeah.
I think so. You would think maybe in a worst case scenario, 1-2. You don't know. Again, it was, the top two favorites in the Mountain West and the runner-up in the FCS level next year. And two of those three games you dominated, just totally dominated, and then go on the road in a place you've never won and beat, a top 15, top 10 quarterback in the country. So I would say, that resume, if we're talking, college basketball resumes, resume looks pretty good in the non-conference schedule. You've sort of gotten to see it all, right? We haven't really seen those big rushing games we saw last year with 300 plus yards like they ran it at against USC last year. I'm not totally sure we'll see that this week. BJ Baylor's a pretty big piece of that last year. They don't quite have BJ Baylor in that backfield this year. But we've sort of seen, everything we've needed to, right? We've seen good tight end play. We've seen good wide receiver play. We've seen good Chance Nolan, really good Chance Nolan.
Right.
Chance still had, some poor choices here and there. In the Boise State game, the kind of bad interception where he's trying to throwing it away. But otherwise, you've seen everything you've wanted to see out of Chance Nolan. You've seen the defense dominate. You've seen the defense get turnovers, which is really big. And two key things the guys today mentioned, like, hey, I think it was Jaden Grandin's like, all right, what's the biggest key to stopping USC's offense? And he said, plain simple, special teams turnovers.
Yeah.
Boom. And what did they do last week? Scored a touchdown on a punt and forced how many turnovers? 2?
Yeah,
the box score up.
Got a pair of
interceptions.
Yeah.
I will say though, I'm not sure why Montana State tried passing it. It was not very effective.
It was a futile effort, wasn't it?
Well, you could just tell when they're dropping back to pass. It was like that just looks clunky. But the Beavers made him pay. Ryan Cooper got his first interception of the season on a really nice play, and they're going to need that this week. The opportunities might be few and far between, but I would say a key against USC, they got to get 2 turnovers at least. If they go the whole game without getting a turnover, I don't think the Beavs are winning. On Saturday.
You just reminded me. I think it was actually 3 turnovers because Rajon had a pick, Ryan Cooper had a pick, and then didn't Jaden Grant have a pick?
Yeah, I think so.
So I think we're 3. I think we're
I'll box
3.
score surf while you talk.
But yeah, so back, just kind of continuing on that point, I agree. There haven't been, it's hard to nitpick with a 3-0 start, right? Obviously, you want to be playing great football by the time the season comes to an end, and I think Oregon State hasn't started this well, to start a season in some time. And, we've been saying kind of colloquially that, Oregon State hasn't started 3-0 since 2014. That 2014 season didn't end up being very great after the 3-0 start. I was talking to a couple other media members at Providence Park this weekend, and that team, I believe, went on to lose 7 of their final 9 after going 3-0. So I think, Oregon State, as far as still wanting to play your best football this season, that's something Jonathan Smith has talked about a couple times in the last few weeks. And that's definitely something good to see because I think Oregon State is still a consistent work in progress and they are going to get better on a weekly basis. But going back to a few points you hit on, I completely agree with the run game. It's maybe a little deeper than it was, in years past where it was like Jermar, BJ, and then a bit of a drop off. And then last year, BJ, Deshaun, or BJ, and then kind of Trey, kind of Deshaun, a little bit of both those guys, but mostly BJ. This year, it really seems like there's just a lot more top end depth, but because maybe they've, shared the sugar, so to speak, there hasn't been the ability for that guy to break that big 70-yard touchdown run.
And there's no real
consistent rhythm.
No real home run hitters either. By the way, you're correct. 3 interceptions.
Yep. Nice. It's always good to remember off the top of the head.
But yeah, there's just real at least that we've seen yet. Maybe, Jam or Damian or Fenwick will break off a massive touchdown run. We haven't seen that yet.
Yeah. And just to point on that, it's interesting. I would agree. Like, of the three guys, like watching them at Providence Park this last weekend, Jam's the guy who I could see maybe breaking a big time run, just between Deshaun and Damian. It looked to me like he's maybe the quickest of the three as
Yeah,
far
he
as
might
like a
be.
straight line speed kind of a thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think when the two fast guys in camp, I would say when I noticed was Damian and Jam. I think those are the two
Yeah.
faster guys, and we know Fenwick is a little bit more of a powerful runner. He's
Yeah, a
not
little bit
really
more of a power back.
he's not going to sort of just outrun you 80 yards to the
Right.
end zone. But those two guys might be. Damian did one practice. I remember rip off a 75-yard touchdown run. And Jam, when I first saw him, it's like he's pretty quick. So I guess we'll have to see. Maybe you're going to be facing some pretty good athletes on the other side. This week might be hard to do, but the opportunities to run the ball this week, I have some numbers. They will be there. USC's defense not really adept of stopping yardage per se.
Yeah, we're certainly going to get right into it. So let's get into the Men of Troy coming to Reser Stadium on Saturday, 6:30 kickoff. Pac-12 Network, going to be an awesome atmosphere. BeaversEdge will be there and be bringing you guys complete coverage and also have a ton more coverage planned ahead of the matchups. Make sure to stay tuned. But TJ, before we get into the nuts and bolts, and you said you have some numbers, I have a couple as well, and I'm curious to see if they overlap because you and I might be thinking the same thing. But let's just start with pretty sure it's fair to call them transfer U now, right?
Yeah, pretty
because
much.
You look at USC's top passer, their top rusher, and their top receiver all played at different schools last year, TJ. What is this malarkey in college football now?
Yeah, well, the transfer portal, and I'm sure we both work in radio for the day job.
Of course, yeah.
So, you get to hear a little bit about people's thoughts on free agency in college football, and it can get a little chaotic. And I think the extreme example is this year's USC Trojan team, and having a new coach, especially a new excellent coach, usually pushes the issue a little bit. But man, the fact that you can get probably the number one transfer quarterback, the Blitnikoff winner from last year, a guy, how many touchdowns did Travis Dye have last year? 15?
Yeah, I don't remember his but I mean, a top 5 running back in Pac-12 probably?
Yeah, easily. And then they got, Austin Jones from Stanford, a starter. On the other side, you can go to the other side of the defense. I know they coached one of ASU's linebackers from last year, a freshman All-American, Eric Gentry, who was a Southern California kid, and they picked him out of Herm's pocket and put him on the USC roster. But that's just a few. There's more receivers. Mario Williams from Oklahoma as well, a talented guy.
Does Herm still have a pocket now?
The pocket is actually full now of the pocket is full of his buyout money. So I think it's $8 million.
I couldn't help it, man. You're like, he snatched him from Herm. I'm like, yeah, when Herm had a program going. But no, finishing your point, you're absolutely right. I mean, they have to be transfer U, and they are like you said, the extreme example of maybe when you take the transfer portal a little too far.
Maybe not even too far, but like rules are rules, and I don't think they broke any rules. So as long as it allows, it might. I don't know. The rules might get tweaked eventually, but that when you have a new coach, new players will come in, and it's never been more available to go play for your coach than it is now. And USC is the example of that. And I guess at least for the next 2 years, probably good thing for the Pac-12 conference in general to have this talent here in this conference to play and represent until they go to the Midwest.
Yeah, it's I've heard multiple people say, USC needed to, go steal other people's talent to get good again. So, that's the way I choose to look at it. It's the best team money can acquire.
Well, I was going to say, I guess so. But then again, most of that talent was leaving Los Angeles because of bad coaching hires before, and Lincoln Riley, I guess. And, Caleb Williams, not an LA guy. But regardless, right? To the point of the talent should always be there. There's no excuse that a USC head football coach should recruit what did Clay Helton rake in 2021? I think it was 40th. No, it was worse than that. I think it was like 100, like 90 something. It was like really atrociously bad. Last in the conference. There's just no reason for that, right? And I'd say Lincoln Riley is doing as quick of a make around as you could possibly do.
Without a doubt, it's like, I have so much respect, for what Pete Carroll and that, what he established down there, after, they, went through their last cycle to start the millennium, obviously. And, it's one of those things where you watch that documentary, great documentary, Trojan War, highly recommend it to anybody listening. It is one of my favorite 30 for 30s. And you see, like, back then, you're like, okay, that's how good USC can recruit then. I'm going to take it a step further. TJ, I don't think USC should ever lose a recruiting battle now that NIL is legal.
Without
when
a doubt.
You consider everything from before and then you consider the benefits that they can offer, yeah, like, for me, that's where I'm like, they were good before it was legal. Now it's like legal to, like, grease the wheels a little bit. They're going to be great for a long time.
And you're right, not even never lose a recruiting battle. There should not be a 5-star player out of the state of California that ever leaves. Bryce Young should have never left. He played down the road. Brock Bowers at Georgia, everyone fawns over him every Saturday. Yep. He's a California kid. The list goes on and on and on. Just go to the SEC. Go look at SEC rosters and look at all the California kids on those rosters playing starring roles while USC had Clay Helton for way too long, too long, and allowed that to happen. And now Lincoln Riley's sort of, as the saying goes, putting the picket fence back up to say, hey, you're not getting any recruits out of here. It's not happening because we're USC and we are keeping these guys. And that's what Pete did. That's how Pete's teams were so good, so unbelievably good. 36 wins in a row.
Dominant. I mean, absolutely dominant, except when they came to Corvallis. So, that
is true. That is true. I believe 1 and 4 since 2000 are ranked USC teams here.
Okay, ranked USC teams. Yeah, I said overall 3 and 4. They snagged a couple wins. One during the Gary Anderson era up here in Corvallis, and then I think I have the list in front of me exactly what year. I'm drawing a blank on the. Let's see. USC got him in 13 and 18. So excuse me, not any of the Anderson regime. I bite my tongue, TJ. And it's definitely going to be interesting in this one, only because there's so many different aspects of this game that you can dive into. But what are some of those numbers that you mentioned at the top of this segment that you're looking for in this game? And then we'll kind of go back and forth, see what we think.
Oh, we can highlight one. USC allows nearly 5 yards per carry on the ground. That's pretty big. Something Oregon State's going to need to do, right? When you just think about the talent, right? I think this Oregon State team is pretty talented. It's hard to match up with USC. So especially in the skill positions. And, USC is going to go down the field and score on offense. That's going to happen in this game, whether you like it or not. I mean, there's too much talent on that offense for them not to score. You got to control the ball on the ground. 4.8 yards per carry. Something I was honestly pretty surprised about. On both offense and defense, they're very similar in yards per play. Both teams. USC's in allowing yards per play at 5.2, which is 58th in the country. Oregon State is 69th at 5.6. And you can kind of put that in perspective because USC has played Stanford, who's a bottom 3 Pac-12
still hard to know
this year. It's pretty hard to know, but based off the last few years, maybe bottom 3 Pac-12 school and not like an unbelievable offensive team. And yet they still put up 28 points on USC.
Right.
They played a Rice and then they played about half a game of Jake Haener before he got hurt in the third quarter. So, maybe those numbers go up a little bit if they played like an actual, like a tougher opponent in their non-conference. Meanwhile, Oregon State had a much tougher non-conference, about a full game of Jake Haener, Boise State and then Montana State. And then on the other side in offense too, they're pretty similar. Of course, USC is 6th in the country in yards per play at 7.7. That's pretty absurd. So the Lincoln Riley high mark of yards per play is when he had Kyler in 18. It's 8.4. I think that was the modern record until Alabama broke it the next year with Tua.
Man, Kyler in college, let me tell you.
Yeah, he was good. He was good. He was a good one. Thankfully for the Beavs, there is no Kyler on that sideline.
No. I mean, it's definitely going to be interesting to see kind of which matchup obviously wins out. Those are some good ones. The one that stood out
to break in real quick, Brenden. for Oregon State, yards per play, 15th at 6.9.
That's
so
impressive.
Again, pretty similar across, not exactly the same, but they're not too far apart on both sides.
Right. Yeah. The one that stands out to me is that USC comes in as the number 7 scoring offense at 50.7 per game, and then Oregon State comes in at 13 with 45.7. So that leads me to believe that both teams can score the ball, which we've seen it. They both can. Explosive plays.
I want to take the over.
Right. The over is 70 in this game. I believe as of let's check on that. Over. Ooh, it's moved up, TJ, to 71 now.
Yeah, and, people are hammering that.
And might as well check on the spread as well. It has moved from a USC 6-point favorite to now USC 7-point favorite. So something to keep an eye on there. But nevertheless, still a touchdown in this game. That's a coin flip, man. That leads me to believe that the bettors really do give Oregon State a shot in this game. And then the last point that I wanted to make on the last stat was, I really think, TJ, the matchup that for me is going to make or break this. And I think, there's a whole lot of different, matchups throughout the game that could end up being the difference. But for me, it's what defense plays better, because we've seen that I think both offenses can score and both defenses have been kind of, about the same. USC 19.7 points and 380 yards per game. Oregon State 25 points and 357. So USC a few less.
The difference
points.
has been turnovers. That's right. It's almost essentially that. And like the game that Beavers really got gashed in, they didn't get any turnovers.
Exactly.
And on USC side, they've gotten, there's been plenty of yardage on both sides, but they kept the scoring down because they forced 10 takeaways.
Absolutely. And I think, when you look at that, it's like I tend to give Oregon State the edge, because it's like the defense usually feeds off the crowd more so than the offense. And I think, apparently new sound system, apparently, the video board to the max this time after kind of being the test run in game 1, and students back, as TJ mentioned at the start of the podcast. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, TJ, some standing room only tickets now.
Yeah, 500 standing room only tickets, so you can go stand on the concourse. There were some people complaining about that this week. So, it's going to clog up the concourse. Like, don't you want more people there?
You need voice, right? So when you put all that together, I think Oregon State's defense, turnover chainsaw, all that, I think they have the ability to be in a fortuitous position heading into this game. They still have to make plays. And, case in point with Jordan Addison, who, got behind the Fresno State defense more than a time or two. And Caleb Williams, who can make plays. And obviously Travis Dye, who we talked about as well, the former Duck, who I believe had – trying to make sure I remember my games correctly. I believe Travis Dye had a pretty big game against Oregon State in the old Civil War last year. Had some big receptions, and I'm drawing a blank on it exactly, but Beavers are well familiar with what he'll bring to the table. So I think when you consider all that, it's going to come down to a few plays, and I think we're going to have a dandy of a game, TJ. I really, really do.
Yeah, and again, special teams, we keep bringing it up, right? The Beavers had a special team slip up against Montana State last week. Yep. You can't allow USC to get a special teams touchdown in, because that's like you're already fighting more uphill than you need to be. So that's key. And then, of course, turnovers as well. So it's going to be a good game. Now, what if Oregon State steals a touchdown with a punt return or a kickoff return? Right? Maybe that makes your defense a little more tired. They have to go back out onto the field. But, those are things that can swing a game. Like, what if you I'm drawing a blank. You allow a touchdown, get a punt return or a kickoff return for a touchdown, and then you come out and you force a turnover. There you go. That's you steal a possession away.
And the other thing that I wanted to mention real quickly is maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, TJ, I don't believe Caleb Williams has thrown a pick this year.
No, they've not turned the ball over one time.
Yeah, so let's just establish that's going to change. That needs to change. That's a gross statistic. I don't like to see that. So it's definitely you think about it. I've talked to a couple people who watched Oklahoma in the past, and they're like, oh, Caleb Williams is usually good for at least one just like bonkers throw a game kind of a thing, right?
And I think it happened a little bit last year, and a big reason why Lincoln Riley is at SC right now. You remember that Oklahoma last year, right? They had in all the offensive, kind of wizardry of Lincoln Riley. It wasn't really quite there last year with Oklahoma. They really kind of fell apart down the stretch, and they would have some games where they would just be in sort of a lull offensively. And, a big part to their losses, they lost Bedlam. Rip Bedlam, by the way. The news coming out this week. No more Bedlam. Yeah. I was listening to Mike Gundy's clip earlier, and he was like, "It's history. We're done."
Yep. It is.
But that was a big reason last year. Like, it's not like a perfect offensive scheme. It is far from it. Like, no, I don't think anything is perfect. If anything was perfect, then everyone would run it. But there is no perfect way to do things. So there is room for that to happen, and it'll be the first big test really for USC.
Certainly. And again, it's going to be a great battle. I really am excited for this game. Saturday night can't come soon enough. And like I said, I'm super thrilled to be able to be at the game on Saturday and bring you guys awesome coverage at BeaversEdge.com. And again, stay tuned this week. TJ is going to give his prediction. I'm going to give mine. Our recruiting guy, Dylan, will have his in there as well. TJ and I believe, are still undefeated on the year in our predictions. Dylan sits at 2-1. So TJ and I got perfect records to keep. So we're definitely going to be.
We might have to make a good decision here.
Yeah,
we got to see.
Make some good decisions. So make sure to check back in for staff predictions later this week. We're also going to give some more USC content. We're going to have the injury report as well. We're going to have the visitor list. Oregon State's obviously going to be hosting a swath of recruits. And with a game like this and an opponent like this, you certainly try to get as many big names on campus as possible. So make sure to check back in later in the week for that. We'll also give some keys to victory over the Trojans as well. So TJ, thanks for jumping on the big pod, man. Looking forward to reading your prediction, and it's gonna be real exciting to see how things shake out at Reser Stadium on Saturday.
Yeah, it's gonna be a really exciting one. It's gonna be buzzing around here, that's for sure. And I think people are happy. This might be the last time ever USC comes to Corvallis. Last time in college football history, they will be here in Corvallis, Oregon. So I'm sure the crowd will make them hear it.
Yeah, as someone who was witness to those wins in 2006 and 2008, if you can get to Reser Stadium, get to Reser Stadium. Watching USC play in Reser Stadium is an event. And as TJ mentioned, the odds of it coming back are you might have better off to win the Powerball, folks. So go out and buy a ticket. Buy a ticket. But no, in all seriousness, though, it's going to be an awesome game. And again, make sure to stay tuned to BeaversEdge.com. Big thanks to TJ Mathewson for jumping on the podcast this week. We'll be back next week, obviously breaking down the matchup against USC and looking ahead to the first conference road game at Utah. That's obviously going to be a big-time game for Oregon State as well. No easy start to Pac-12 play for the Beavers as they get a pair of ranked teams, but it starts on Saturday night with the Trojans in Reser Stadium. So again, 6:30. Pac-12 Network, and stay locked to BeaversEdge.com. Big thanks to TJ Mathewson. This is Brenden Slaughter signing off on this edition of the Edge Podcast.